It's been nearly 2 years since God of War Ragnarok was released on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Now that the adventures of everyone's favorite sad dad and his curious son are headed to PC, we figured it's time for a crash course in every secret, tip, and trick you need to know to lay the smackdown on a bunch of Norse gods, and most importantly, learn the true meaning of family. First up is 21 things God of War Ragnarok doesn't tell you from the early game. Let's dive in.
God of War Ragnarok does a good job of letting you know how to play, but this is a big adventure with a lot of mechanics, and not everything gets explained fully. With that in mind, here's part 1 of the things God of War Ragnarok doesn't tell you. We are doing our absolute best to not spoil anything, so for this first part, we're keeping it to tips that can be applied early in the story. We'll have a part 2 later on that dives even deeper, but for now, to be extra careful, here's an early game spoiler warning. Mystic gateways are Ragnarok's way of quickly moving between or within realms, but you don't have to go anywhere to make use of it. If you need to top off your health and your rage, and really, who doesn't in these trying times, simply interact with a Mystic gateway and it will fill your meters all the way up. Kratos may be a calmer and less impetuous individual than he used to be, but he can still find some merit in breaking random objects around him, as he'll usually be rewarded with free hack silver. Go ahead, buddy. Let it all out. While some of the smaller enemies in Ragnarok can be the most annoying, you can find a brief bit of catharsis by holding the left trigger and pressing R1 with the Blades of Chaos equipped for an insta-kill. Wretches will have their heads popped like overripe grapes, and you can even fling nightmares back at other enemies like bombs. Cathartic and useful. If you're finding yourself too reliant on a particular skill, or you keep activating it by accident, you can disable any skill that you've learned while on the skill tree menu by holding triangle. Or listen to Father Kratos and just learn some self-control. Both will work. It's a bit buried in the menus, but you can upgrade your runic attacks by spending XP, so make sure not to use it all in the skill tree. It may be needed elsewhere. When traveling on the branches of Yggdrasil between realms, it can be easy to just keep walking forward to get to your next gateway, but if you veer off to the edge of the branches, you can get some extra voice lines from Mimir or Atreus.
You do remember we don't have the Unity Stone to let us jump off, right?
Make sure you check the Labors tab of the Goals section of your menu. You'll find a ton of things you can get extra XP for, like killing a certain type of enemy, freezing bad guys, or finding collectibles across the different realms. Atreus' skill tree will grow over the course of your adventure, so if you don't feel like spending any XP on his initial skills, hold on to it for later. If you're getting frustrated while trying to clear out a section of a realm, only to be met with an undiscovered on the map, you may need to come back later after unlocking different areas or traversal tools. Watch out for Ormur, as they can be a great source of crafting resources. They look similar to axolotl, but these creatures won't harm you. They'll sit on the surface making a repetitive cry, and when they catch sight of you, they'll burrow underground. Find a vantage point nearby where the Ormur can't see you before taking it out with the axe to claim your bounty. You can hold triangle to charge Frost Awaken on your Leviathan axe before starting an encounter to give yourself an early leg up. Make use of this, especially before opening a door where you know there will be a fight. A good way to get yourself out of a bad situation is to activate your rage, as it will usually stagger an attacking enemy. This is especially useful if you missed a yellow parry and get staggered. Not today, Hades! Speaking of staggering enemies, picking up a health stone while an enemy is near will stagger them too. Health and rage stones that are not dropped by enemies will respawn, so don't worry about saving them for later. You can keep up to 60 manual saves if you feel the need to go backwards at any point. Ragnarok is usually pretty good at giving you different points to explore and do what you want, but it's nice to have those slots if you need them. If you're having trouble with mini-boss fights, you can turn on an option to add checkpoints to those fights in the accessibility menu. Scroll down to the combat section and you'll see it last on the list. Note that you can't turn this on for certain difficulties. Enemies' health bar colors aren't only for flavor, they actually tell you the enemy's level relative to your own. Green means they're a lower level, yellow means they're the same level, orange means they're 1 level above you, purple means 2 levels above you, and red is the horrible and feared 3 levels above you. Just run away at that point, seriously. What are you trying to prove? Odin's ravens can be difficult to hit with your axe, but you'll receive a method later in your journey that makes them a little bit easier to strike, so don't feel the need to spend too long with one if it's getting frustrating. Performing different skills a certain amount of times can actually unlock further upgrades for that skill later on in the story, so make sure to vary your skill use starting early on. You can also power level these skills by using them in the sparring section in Niflheim. Even though you won't get any XP or resources, you can still use this area to get stronger. While it's good to experiment with a few different sets of armor as you progress, don't worry about trying to upgrade each piece at once. If you really want to try out other gear later that you neglected early, you'll eventually be able to buy certain resources directly from Brock and Sindri as you progress the story.
If there's one thing Kratos is really good at, besides being like a dad and all, it's fighting. Up next are 17 essential combat tips for the early game. Check it out.
Ragnarok approaches, and let's face it, if your combat skills aren't up to snuff, the creatures and champions of the Nine Realms will tear you apart, even if you are the God of War. Fortunately, there are plenty of tips that we can offer to help you live up to the reputation of Kratos as a god-slaying ultra badass. These are 17 spoiler-free, essential early game God of War Ragnarok tips you need to know. The heavy throw on your Leviathan axe is extremely strong. It will freeze weaker enemies in place, which by itself is wonderful because it takes one enemy out of the fight, but from there you can use a heavy barehanded attack to push them into a wall or off a ledge for an instant kill, or you can push them into other enemies to inflict frost on them and slow them down. Just know that it doesn't work very well on the burlier enemies that it doesn't instantly freeze. Don't sleep on the light throw of your axe either. Aiming for a weaker enemy's legs is a good way to trip them up and either stop their approach, or incapacitate them long enough for you to use a strong but slow move, like the Serpent Snare, which is a great move that not only does big damage, but also creates a small explosion of frost that affects other enemies. The Hyperion pull skill on the Blades of Chaos is one of the most universally useful skills in the game. In fights against standard enemies, it can pull them towards you and launch them up for an air combo, more on those right after this. It can pull weak wretches and nightmares towards you for instant kill opportunities, and if you upgrade the Hyperion grapple, you can hold down R1 and pull yourself towards them to knock them back and deal a bunch of stun damage. When you're using the Blades of Chaos, always look for air combo opportunities. Weaker enemies can be launched up by holding down R2, and once they're in the air, you can keep them there by holding down L2 and pressing R1 to slam them into the ground and bounce them right back up, just like in the old games. You can keep this up for as long as you want, though you'll need to be careful that others around you don't interrupt. Don't neglect your fists. They are essentially a third weapon and are especially good at building up stun damage. If you find yourself up against an enemy that you're not doing a lot of damage to, consider throwing your axe away and using your unarmed attacks in tandem with the Trace's arrows to build up that stun and go for an execution. Speaking of stun damage, once you fill the stun meter on an enemy, a R3 button prompt will appear next to them, letting you know that you can perform an execution. If this icon is yellow, then when you click R3 on them, you'll do a bunch of damage, but it won't kill them. If it's red, you'll get a proper execution. Fortunately, you don't have to click R3 immediately. Keep an eye on this meter to let you know if you still have time to deal damage before you press R3. If the icon is yellow, try doing some more damage to get it to turn red and secure the kill. God of War's combat system utilizes a popular action game technique called dodge offsetting, which means that if you're in the middle of a combo string, you can dodge and still pick up the combo where you left off after you come out of it. This is important to know because certain combo strings have greater power or unique properties on their final hits. It only works though if you do a sidestep, not the double tap roll evasion, so keep that in mind. Always think about positioning. Consider all of the following things. Can I see most of the enemies in the room? If not, take some time to reposition yourself so you don't get clipped from behind. Are there any opportunities for easy kills? Cliffs, walls that you can shatter frozen enemies against, or interactable objects in the environment. Always make sure you scout out and put yourself near these opportunities. Are there ranged enemies? If so, you'll want to either make sure you take them out quickly, or you put yourself in a spot where they can't hit you. Keep a close eye on your resources. God of War's combat largely revolves around your ability to manage a ton of different combat resources effectively. If you're struggling in a tough fight, make sure you're using everything at your disposal. These resources are your rage meter, your companion's arrows and special ability, your light and heavy runic attacks on the axe, your light and heavy runic attacks on the blades, and your permafrost and immolation meters, which you can also activate when full with certain skills. Also, make sure you know what each of the status effects do and how to inflict them. Inflicting status effects on certain enemies at the right time can really help turn the tide of a fight. Some early game ones to look out for are Sonic, most useful against airborne enemies to keep them suspended in stasis while in the air. If you see an enemy is almost full on Sonic buildup, launch them up and hit them with Atreus' Sonic arrows. And Frost and Burn. These are the most common status effects you'll have access to thanks to your axe and blades. Pretty self-explanatory. Frost will slow enemies down and freeze them when maxed out, and Burn will deal continuous damage. The game eventually teaches you that you can tap the L1 button twice to interrupt these blue circle attacks, but you can use the technique even before that to knock away enemy shields. It's a vital attack against shielded enemies even before they give you the warning sign of the blue circles. New to God of War Ragnarok is the ability to power up your axe by holding triangle, or start spinning your blades by tapping the button quickly. These are great techniques that you should get in the habit of using for a number of reasons. Quite simply, they deal more damage than regular attacks. They are also a great way of adding elemental status effect buildup, especially on enemies that are too tough to be frozen by your heavy axe throw. And finally, they typically do great area of effect damage, so they're especially helpful in fights where you're overwhelmed by a bunch of enemies all grouped up together. Two skills that will dramatically increase your damage output are Extinguish Flames on the axe and Vaporize Frost on the blades. These cause your weapons to deal more damage to frozen or burning enemies when attacking them with the opposing weapon. So, once an enemy gets frozen, you switch to your blades. And when they're on fire, you switch to your axe. This is tricky to get down, but it's something you should always think about as the damage increase adds up very quickly with each hit. Along those lines, two other skills you'll definitely want to upgrade as soon as you can are Permafrost and Immolation, both of which add elemental damage automatically to your axe or blades if you're able to keep your aggression up without taking damage. We touched upon it earlier, but note that there are two different types of dodges in God of War. A single tap of the X button makes you sidestep, while double tapping the X button will make you roll. In situations where you can't block an attack, generally you'll want to strive to sidestep, as you recover much faster from a sidestep and will still be within striking distance of an enemy after avoiding them. The roll is great to get out of a bad situation or to avoid certain attacks with a large area of effect because you're invulnerable for the entirety of the roll, but if your goal is to keep up the pressure, aim to use sidesteps instead of rolls. As you utilize many of the skills you unlock, you'll earn awards for using them a certain number of times. What Ragnarok doesn't tell you off the bat is that eventually you'll be able to empower skills you've got a gold medal for, further boosting their capabilities. You can choose from options like increasing the elemental damage, stun, or stagger resistance, so be sure to vary your skill use to level each of them up. Switching between your weapons in the heat of battle can be crucial to victory, especially when trying to make use of your runic attacks as they become available. However, finding the right time to swap weapons can be hard to manage. Luckily, you can essentially queue up a weapon swap by tapping the D-pad during other, lengthy and protected animations, like shield parries and skills. As soon as the animation is complete, Kratos will instantly bring out the other weapon.
What's a God of War without an incredible set of armor and skills? Not sure what to unlock first? Don't worry, we've got you covered in the next video.
It's been a while since the last time we saw Kratos, Atreus, and Mimir, both in Midgard and in real life. And if you're anything like this trio, your grand adventuring skills might be a bit rusty as you pick up the sticks. To help make sure you can get through Fimbulwinter, and more importantly, the opening hours of the game, we've put together a list of our picks for the best skills, upgrades, and unlocks to get early on in God of War Ragnarok.
Huh. That might be my best piece yet today.
There won't be too much to customize from the very start of the game, except for your weapon skills. So let's begin there. Glacial Rake is a powerful ability that you can get fairly quickly if you save up your XP, and it's absolutely worth the relatively short wait. You should be able to collect the necessary 750 experience points if you save it all until just before returning home after tracking the bear in the opening hour of the game. By holding R1, Kratos drags his Leviathan axe through the ground, sending forward a shockwave of ice. This attack is very fast to use, it almost always applies frost to the enemies that it strikes, and it can hit many targets in its path. There are other skills you could purchase earlier, such as the ranged Vengeful Sickle ability, but Glacial Rake is the strongest singular skill that you can buy for the axe when you're starting out. Once you pick up the Blades of Chaos after the first hour, you have a whole other set of skills to unlock. There aren't too many options here to start out with, but we recommend saving your XP after Glacial Rake and putting the points towards Hyperion Grapple for 750 XP, which you should be able to buy right before your fight with the Huntress. By holding R1 when aiming, Kratos will yank himself towards enemies, rather than pulling them towards him. This inflicts a large amount of stun, and also allows Kratos to get close at a moment's notice. Once you visit Sindri's house for the first time, you'll have two shield options to pick from. The Dauntless shield is the classic God of War 2018 experience, rewarding parries for last-second blocks. By comparison, the Stonewall shield cannot parry enemies, but it absorbs damage from normal and even yellow attacks that can normally only be blocked by parrying with the Dauntless shield. When you charge either shield, by parrying or absorbing damage, you can unleash that energy at your enemies by double tapping L1. If you're looking for a more straightforward defense, we recommend starting with the Stonewall shield. The upcoming enemies have some unpredictable parry timings and ranged attacks, so you may be grateful for the extra defense from the Stonewall. You can also change your shield whenever you see the Huldra brothers, though be warned that you have to upgrade each shield separately, so consider figuring out which one works best for you and sticking with it for a while. Use the Frozen Flame you received for defeating the Huntress to upgrade your axe and increase the number of skills available. If you only bought Glacial Rake and Hyperion Grapple, you should have just enough points to buy anything you want for the axe. We suggest purchasing Serpent's Snare for a satisfying and powerful heavy attack that makes your target double as a ranged frost detonation bomb. You can't really go wrong with your weapon skills from here on out, but here are a few of our favourites that you might want to try first as you explore Svartalfheim. Permafrost empowers your axe with frost as you do more damage without getting hit, which is a nice passive elemental buff. And Vengeful Sickle allows your axe to repeatedly strike an enemy after you charge a light ranged attack. For the Blades of Chaos, you could get the Blazing Explosion ability for 750 XP to increase the power of your ranged heavy attack. You can also get Rushing Chaos to add a new sprinting attack into your repertoire, but if nothing else here excites you too much, you can always hang on to your points and pick one of the skills that you will unlock for upgrading the blades, like the Immolation skill, which is the fire version of the Permafrost skill that we just mentioned. When you're talking to Brock or Sindri, you can also have a look at their available armor. You're probably only going to have enough hack silver to purchase one set at level 1, but here's what you can expect from each set of gear when it is one level stronger and it gains an extra perk. The Fortified Husk set strengthens Kratos' block and parries, adding a chance for you to retaliate against your foes with an explosive counterattack. The Vidar's Might set is all about dealing more damage at the end of a combo, and empowering Kratos to do more damage afterwards for a period of time. Both sets are viable options, but if we had to recommend one over the other, the Fortified Husk set will keep your health above 0 for longer as you learn the combat systems. Each set of armor is made to work together, and you will receive compound bonuses for equipping the same armor pieces of a set, but you can also mix and match these if you want, say, a more protective piece of chest armor paired with wrist and waist armor that provides you with more damage. There's only 2 Leviathan axe handles to choose from early on, so we recommend continuing to use the Furious Maul grip that you equip from the chest back at the house. This is as good a time as any to mention that unlike the first game, you can keep your starting equipment and upgrade it all the way through to the end game, but it will be decidedly average in comparison to other equipment while it is still at lower levels. When you finally have enough points to unlock something for Atreus, you'll want to unlock his Watchful Protector ability. His skill tree is quite small at the moment, so you might feel inclined to save up for something more powerful, but Watchful Protector is a good one to get now, as it allows Atreus to distract enemies if Kratos is becoming overwhelmed, which is invaluable during tougher fights. When you first arrive in Svartalfheim, there will be a number of side areas where you can beach your boat. In this area where you learn how to freeze geysers, there's a Nornir chest with a health upgrade inside. Jump up on the tall outcropping by freezing the geyser closest to the beach and climbing on top. You should see all 3 Nornir seals from here, so break them with your axe and then open the chest. There's also another chest further in the wetlands. When you see a golden chest overlooking the river, turn to the west and row underneath the rocky bridge. Clear out the enemies, and then rotate 3 seal locks to match the symbols on this chest. There's one behind the geyser, one above the feeding pit, and one on top of the upper area. Now open up the chest and claim your horn of blood mead to increase your rage meter. The following pieces of gear can only be obtained by going to the optional area in Svartalfheim, so if you go straight to Durlin, then you will need to come back for these side quests and gear later. It will be a while before you can do that, so if you've been struggling at all up until this point, then these pieces of equipment can help you out a lot. If you decide to row into the Bay of Bounty for the In Service of Asgard quest to shut down the mining rigs, you will earn Nidavellir ore, a unique material which can be used to craft a unique set of armor. The Nidavellir's Finest armor set not only offers substantial increases to strength, defense, and vitality, meaning you will take less damage and have more health without losing much strength, but the chest piece will also grant a burst of health when you stun and grab an enemy. The other pieces of the armor set slow down the stun decay on enemies, and it's easily the strongest armor you'll get early on, so it's definitely worth clearing all 3 rigs before heading back to speak to Durlin. While in the Bay of Bounty, beach on the central island and go to the west of Sindri's shop. Here you'll fight a mini-boss Draugr known as the Hateful, and once defeated it will drop a number of things, including the Cursed Empress handles for your Blades of Chaos. These handles have a low chance of granting an increase to strength and runic damage every time you hit someone with them, while also providing a better stat increase than the basic steel handles you start with. Finally, to complete your new look with gear in every slot, you'll want a new shield rond. To do this early, you need to complete the side quest The Weight of Chains, also in the Bay of Bounty. I'll do my best not to spoil it for you here. You start the quest by going to the island near the geyser, to the north of Sindri's central island where we just were. Follow the quest until you zipline over to this outcropping to the east. Open up the chest here to find the Rond of Aggravation. This rond is best paired with the Dauntless shield, as it rewards you with a rage burst on successful parries, but even if you don't want to parry with your shield, it has excellent stat increases to defense, vitality, and luck, so it's worth getting if you want to move away from basic equipment.
Okay, so you're gonna get hit a lot in Ragnarok, so why not even the playing field a little bit? Up next is a look at how to earn some of the game's best armor from a secret quest, and yeah, it's a secret.
God of War Ragnarok has enough side quests, collectibles, and optional bosses to fill the whole 9 realms. However, there's at least one obscure side mission that you won't find on your map or in your quest log, and it unlocks some of the best defensive armor in the game. So, if you've been wondering what to do with that mystical heirloom you found in Midgard, here's your guide to one of God of War Ragnarok's coolest secrets that we know of. You can only commence this mission once you can open these glowing fishes, which you will be able to do once you complete the mission Forging Destiny in the main story. We strongly recommend that you only watch this video after you have done so, as we have to spoil a pivotal moment of the game's plot in order to proceed with this guide. Okay, you've all gone away and come back. Let's get started. Once you have Draupnir, you can use its detonation ability to crack open these fissures in walls and open up new paths to explore. In Midgard, to the southwest of Tyr's temple is one of these obstacles. Break it open and pick up the mystical heirloom on the left. Its description says that it seems important, but doesn't seem to have any practical application in combat, which is strange because it's an item that you equip in your relic slot. This relic is actually used to wake trolls that have been placed into an artificial slumber. So if you missed the troll fights from the first game, you're going to love these guys. The slumbering beasts aren't marked on your map at all, but by the time you can get the heirloom, you can visit all 3 locations. We'll also say now that you should grab every piece of loot that these guys drop, as they're the only source of some really valuable crafting materials. Either grab them from the trolls themselves or the dwarf's chest. The first troll is located close to where you found the heirloom in Midgard. In the southwest of the lake is a path that leads to the derelict outpost. Climb the chain, cross the gap with your blades, and take out the wisps. Standing here is Blavuga Stein. Use the relic and it will wake from its slumber, ready to fight. Watch out for its blinding attack and block any normal strikes that come your way, while increasing its stun meter to do some big damage. The second troll can be found in Alfheim in the Forbidden Sands after clearing the second sandstorm. In the west, up this ledge is an arena filled with dead bodies and the second troll, Bjarg Stormer. This troll has a number of attacks that are more difficult to block, so stay agile as you take it down. It's also quite susceptible to ice attacks if you can manage to pull off a few Glacial Rake or Sprinting R2 attacks. With this troll taken care of, there's only one more location left. In Vanaheim, you'll find Noatun's Garden to the south of Freyr's camp. Dock your boat at either of these beaches, clear out the enemies, and also take out these totems to simplify the arena if you haven't done so already. Standing guard is a duo of trolls, Gulrab of the Ashes and Gulrab of the Frost. Not only are these the strongest trolls to face, but they're each imbued with elemental damage and resistances. So much so that Kratos will be stunned for a significant period of time if you hit one troll with their own element. So either use Draupnir for this fight, or be very deliberate with your attacks when using the axe or blades. The Permafrost and Immolation active ability, where you press L1 plus triangle when fully charged, is great for dealing significant damage to each troll, but the wide attack range will make it more likely for your attacks to hit the wrong troll and stun you. So use this ability wisely, or maybe even wait until one troll is down before activating it.
No more trolls.
You've made sure of that.
These are the last of the trolls, and they should all have dropped a piece of Slumberstone, which you can use to craft the Steinbjorn armor. This armor gives you one stat, defense. Wearing a leveled up version of this armor will almost max out your defense stat, which you can pair with other vitality gear to make yourself one of the most survivable gods in the 9 realms. The armor also has the perk of Bloodthirsty Retaliation, allowing you to gain health back with each attack you use after taking a significant hit. Think of it like Bloodborne's aggressive health regain system. Once you've bested all 4 trolls, you might think you're done with the mystical heirloom, but we've found at least one more use for it so far. We don't want to ruin the surprise for you, but if you head to a certain beach on the southeastern edge of the Bay of Bounty, keep your heirloom equipped and make sure you're ready for another fight.
What's a grand adventure without some side quests? Up next are the 10 most important side quests we've found in God of War Ragnarok.
God of War Ragnarok has a wealth of side content, and most of it is pretty great, whether it be for rewards or story reasons. So we've compiled the 10 most important side quests we think you should complete during your first playthrough. A quick warning, some of these are impossible to talk about without spoilers. We're going to work through these chronologically, and we'll have multiple spoiler warnings throughout for particular points in the story that we'll give very clear cutoff points for. So you can revisit this video later after reaching certain story beats that we'll be very clear about. Here are some timestamps so you can safely skip to where you need to be, just based on the completion of particular story quest titles. We'll start from the beginning, up until you complete the quest titled Groa's Secret.
Well, we don't want to intimidate him.
One of the first major side quests you'll find in Ragnarok, you'll receive in Service of Asgard by following the main story after arriving in Svartalfheim. Speak to the dwarf sitting down in the bar once he has a blue favor marker over his head to add it to your log. And then it will be easy to follow once you're back in the boat in the open lake area. This quest will net you the first Muspelheim seed half, as well as a shiny new armor set. You'll also find out a bit more about Mimir's past. After finishing the first main story quest in Alfheim, Grow a Secret, talk to Sindri at the blacksmith station to unlock Secret of the Sands. Following this quest will make exploration in the Barrens area of Alfheim much easier. Alright, here's your next spoiler warning. After completing the main story quest, The Reckoning, come back for more important side quests. We mean it. Big spoilers here. Finish The Reckoning, and then come back.
I expected you to come and find me.
Upon finishing the Reckoning quest while in Vanaheim, talk to the blacksmiths to unlock the mysterious Orb quest. While the quest isn't much on its own, it will guide you along the path in the Vanaheim River Delta to collect the pieces for Lunda's Lost Armor, one of the best armor sets in the game. Freya's Missing Piece is a side quest that shouldn't be missed for story implications alone, as it really explores Freya's story arc. Make sure you unlock it by breaking this log open by the Mystic Gateway next to Freyr's camp in Vanaheim, and continuing along the new path by boat rather than walking through the gateway. After finishing what you want to in Vanaheim, travel back to Alfheim with Freya now that you can open special chisel gates, and take your sled to the west side of the Barrens to dispel this door. Song of the Sands will be added to your log automatically after entering this area, and finishing it will disperse the sandstorm, just like in the Barrens. Here's your next spoiler warning. After finishing the quest Forging Destiny, come back here for more side quests.
Snack?
I do not need a snack.
We've put these quests together because you can complete them simultaneously. After finishing the main story quest Forging Destiny, talk to Durlin instead of going through the Mystic Gateway to unlock Spirit of Rebellion. Following that questline to Dragon Beach will take you to the Lost Treasure starting point as well. Completing Spirit of Rebellion and the Lost Treasure will bring you to the chest with the second Muspelheim Seed Half. For those math nerds keeping score, that makes a hole at this point, as well as a ton of crafting resources, Hacksilver, and even Mountain Splitter, a new runic attack for your Dropnir Spear. They're pretty standard quests as far as the story goes, but the rewards are definitely worth it. Here's your next spoiler warning. After completing the quest Creatures of Prophecy, come back here for your next set of side quests. After completing the Vanaheim quest Creatures of Prophecy, you'll unlock the Scent of Survival quest automatically, but the choice to follow it right then and there is yours. Completing it will lead to an entirely new giant optional area and multiple new side quests, so make sure you don't ignore it. Here's your final spoiler warning. Come back here after completing the game for some post-game side quests.
Where to first?
Much like God of War 2018, there are credits after the credits. Talk to the blacksmiths after descending down to the lake in Midgard and find an important story quest. After finishing the main story, return to Niflheim and take this alternate path to the left before the Raven Tree to find a new area. Follow it down to the bottom for a cool story surprise.
And there you go. All that's left is for you to explore the vast world of God of War Ragnarok, and make sure you serve up Odin a knuckle sandwich. If you still want more God of War content, check out our review of the game. And for even more comprehensive coverage and walkthroughs, be sure to check out the guide at IGN.com. And always, for everything else video games, keep it locked here on IGN.